Welcome everybody to the Prime Real Estate Mastermind. We do these events on a monthly basis. Whole reason we do them is to give back to our community. We are very thankful for all that you do for us and each other. You support us in all the content that we put out. So this is our way of giving back. And not only that, many of you we've had the conversation with about how important it is to interact and network within the investor community, because that's how you learn. Go and find people that are doing the things you want to do, learn from them, give them their shine, and always give them their shout outs when you're sharing tricks from them, and you shop the relationship build over time. So today's podcast is really for people that want to gain insights into the world of investing, and from a top industry expert who I've watched Andrew do it for years, and it's been very interesting because I watched him build a portfolio. I've seen him work. He demands excellence from himself and his work and all things that he's involved in. But it's been really awesome to also watch how he launched his podcast with that same premise. So when Andrew launched his podcast, immediately I noticed the production quality was very high, and he was laser focused on his audience and his niche. The people he was bringing on were investors to talk about investing. When I was producing content early on, I was a shotgun. I was sharing everything. I was probably doing handstands in some of my posts. So I've learned lessons from Andrew, and we've worked on projects together too, where again, I love seeing people that demand excellence in all things that they do. People are very, very different, but we can all learn from each other. And I think that's the very best part about it. So I'm going to bring Andrew right on now so everybody can say hi to him. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I bet you got a bunch of people that are super excited to see you today. So what's going on in your world these days?
Just keeping busy. Got a baby on the way. So lots of stuff, real estate, and then of course family stuff. So I'm sure that's the story for many people on this live stream.
It is. Well, you're a turbo, so I'm sure you'll be just fine. I'm going to bring on Lindsay as well too. We normally don't do this. Normally we come on and we actually just start talking about the state of affairs in the marketplace first, so everybody can kind of see what's happening. But you're watching the market, I'm sure, very, very closely. So I'd love your insights, and then we can get to a quick intro from Lindsay.
Yeah. Well, Andrew first.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Andrew, go ahead. Yeah. Why don't you let us know your thoughts on the current state of the real estate investing marketplace?
No, I haven't done my monthly recap with Mark Loeffler to dig into all the stats, but you know what? I mean, I think that the market is still doing a lot of the same that it has been doing, and you guys obviously are feet on the ground to see that. I don't predict going forward we're going to see another 30% appreciation year across the board in Canada. Some markets obviously saw that. But what I do still see is in the investor world is I see a lot of attention on markets that still have a lot of cash flow relative to their price point. So I'm sure it's no secret to you guys that you're seeing people heading up to Sudbury. A lot of investor focus on places like that, going north where the build cost is still more than you can buy resale homes for, significantly. So there's still quite the opportunity. So I'm seeing a lot of attention on markets like that, and I expect that to continue with both investors and resale homeowners that just want to find a way to make their money go further. So on top of the northern markets in Ontario, of course, there's rumblings of people investing in Alberta. They like the prospects of what's happening, oil coming back, and then of course going out east, where again the same type of story. You're able to buy stuff for less than the cost it would take to rebuild it. So you've got existing city infrastructure, all that. So we're still seeing a lot of attention on that. Again, I still do need to dig into my monthly update and dig into where the stats are month to month and month over last year's month to see exactly how our numbers lie. But for me, when I started digging into the weeds over the last 8 to 12 months of just watching every single month, what's changed, it's just a common theme. We're just seeing exactly what we would expect to see kind of play out. There's so much extra currency floating around. There's so much extra money in the market, and it's finding its way to real estate. And then you add in the supply chain struggles, the challenges to get materials, lumber, steel, all those increased prices. have translated into the higher price of real estate, because it's kind of a ping pong effect. You know, people buy new construction until they realize new construction is too expensive, and then they buy resale, and then they ping pong back.
Because that's very true. And like,
yeah,
strategically, even from the agent side, that's quite often what we're doing is, then builders feel like they're getting cocky, and then we go back to resale, and then the builders see that they're not getting as many, and then we come back to the builders. It's very true what you're saying. So
markets take care of themselves, right? That's how the free market acts. And if we would have a broader picture free market, I think it'd be a little easier for people to get into housing right now. But this is what we're dealing with, what we're contending with. So there's, when you see an opportunity, when you see new construction go up in price and it's unaffordable, go look at the resale, because that's going to be the next opportunity. That price is going to get driven up because everything's supply and demand. If everyone's focus shifts to resale, that's where they go. So lately I've just been trying to take a step back from the micro and get back into the macro look at the market and what's happening, because one city's statistics don't really matter. I think it's more what you plan to do going forward, what you plan to do, how you plan to leverage this opportunity, from what you see. If you understand how the market behaves, what you can do with that.
Yeah. And I think we're moving to a global village, right? So you're talking about places like Sudbury, people relocating, doing things that they never did before, because truthfully, to me, it's the end of the industrial revolution, right? We're moving into something else. This has all expedited it. You want to talk about whatever is happening in whatever country you happen to live in. That's one thing, but it is definitely a shift to the macro. And the principles when it comes to investing are the same, whether you're north of the border, south of the border. You're looking at the math of it. And if the math makes sense, that's one thing I've always respected and I've watched about you closely, is how you really do look at the math, right? I'm a very much more of an art side of things when it comes to how I approach business, but my wife is the math. And maybe it's because you're both Ivey grads. That probably has something to do with it. So I think surrounding yourself with samurais like Andrew and people that can come onto a podcast like this, and I ask them the direct question, what are your opinion of the marketplace, and give an answer like that, is why we do these events. So thank you very, very much for that concise answer. You'll see my eyes darting back and forth throughout the episode. That's because I have comments coming in from people on the background. If you've never been on these lives before, they're pretty fun. And in the Prime Mastermind Facebook group, we are going to drop a link that you can actually come on and ask live questions throughout the episode. I like making this real time. So if you want to come in and ask a question, go to the Facebook Prime Mastermind group. The link is in the actual description here, or Eric, my producer, will actually drop it in right now. And then you can join that group. Lindsay will authorize you, and then you can come ask Andrew, meet him. And this is the networking piece, right? Because then he sees your face. You can DM him after the episode, thank him for all the content. Go to his podcast, leave a 5-star review, and then listen to all his back episodes. And that's how you really build a community. So Lindsay, you are killing it in just the fact that you're a real estate agent, you're a designer, you're an investor yourself, and you've somehow created this life that I don't think you even want a vacation from. But how are you seeing the buying and selling happening in the investment space in real estate right now?
Yeah, awesome. And it goes back to a lot of what Andrew just said. It's that ping pong effect of buyers and sellers in our market, between everyone wants to list at the same time and everyone wants to buy at the same time. It's that herd mentality, which Andrew is leaning right into. So it's exactly what we're seeing, boots on the ground. A little bit of slowdown in August, which was great, was able to get some buyers into properties, which with conditions and some under asking offers, which is rare. We're not seeing that as much, and seeing things pick up a little bit more, boots on the ground. But exactly that same thing that Andrew's talking about, that ping pong, everyone follows everyone one way and then the other way. And I think I said it a couple months ago when we did our last one. It's the exact same, just a different price point and different demand. So it's the exact same thing.
Awesome. Appreciate that. And I mean, it's like kids playing soccer when they're 5 years old, right? Is the ball gets kicked out and they all go this way and the ball gets kicked out. Meanwhile, the smart investors are running behind the pack, waiting for the ball to get kicked back to them. And I think it's just staying a couple steps ahead. So we are going to dig into that. We're going to dig into Andrew's podcast. So I'm going to kick you off for a second, Lindsay. I'm going to bring you back on because I know you got some burning questions and you're going to probably unplug my computer so you can take this over. So I'll bring you back on in a couple minutes. All right. Awesome. So Andrew, let's first get into your background before we get into the podcast, just to give some context. I'm sure this is going to be one of those top episodes that hits millions of people down the road because it's going to live in perpetuity. So how did you get into the space of real estate investing, first off?
Okay, yeah. So like my motivation for getting in, like
Yeah,
why?
I mean, I
Yeah,
guess even the first motivation and then your first steps into the journey of
sure.
investing.
Well, I started investing in 2011, and so before that, I had gone to Western. I started Western in 2004, graduated in 2008 from the Ivey Business School, and I started teaching first year business, an intro course. It's like everything from finance to strategy and marketing operations, all that stuff. And I loved entrepreneurship. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had no idea what I would do because I didn't really particularly feel like I had any specific experience that would lead me to be successful as an entrepreneur in one specific category. But what I did see while I was in school was landlords owning student rentals. And I'm like, whoa, they're making a lot of money off these students. Like, I want to be the guy collecting 500 a month times 5 bedrooms. And I started working broken math, just assuming I'd never had a mortgage, but I started kind of figuring, okay, well, he probably paid this, his mortgage is probably this. And I worked out some numbers, and I kind of concluded that this guy that owned these 4 townhouses right in front of the gates, which you'll know the ones I'm talking about, Justin, I figured he had to be making like $140,000, $150,000 after tax, something like that off those 4. And I'm like, wow, that's way more than my parents make. And I just want to own those. I don't want to work. So that was kind of where something started clicking. So I taught business for a couple of years, and then I started working for, started working at the Pro Funds brokerage as a mortgage agent because I met Carmen, who's now my mother-in-law, and she was a real estate investor, and she inspired me. And before I even knew Carmen, I was talking to Jordan. We're talking about like life. Jordan's my wife, and what do I want to do? And I'm like, I really don't know, but I think I want to be a real estate investor. I just don't know how to do that. And that was kind of the entrance into that industry. I bought my first property after working with Carmen for 6-8 months, something like that. And then I bought another one, and I'm like, wow, this is too slow, and I'm out of money. and then I got into development. So I tried my hand at development in 2013 and failed miserably. And at the same time, invested in the U.S. in Youngstown, Ohio, like things I could do with little money, buying houses at $10,000, $15,000, and got burned really bad. So I just had one massive failure after another because I tried to get in fast. I wanted to move quickly. And so that almost got me out of the game. So 2014 was a silent year for me. I didn't do anything in real estate. And then 2015 rolled around. I went back and I taught one more year at Western. They asked me to come back. I'm like, what a great way to come back to London and see if I can get, back into that market. And so I was watching my friend, who's just a badass real estate investor, crushing $100,000 flips like it was nothing, doing like 3 to 6 at a time like it was nothing. And I'm like, well, I can't let him have all the fun. Too many people around me making money in real estate. I got to get back in. And so that's when I jumped back in and I started doing student rental burrs. I ended up starting a company to flip student rentals. So I do purpose built with an addition, 5 bed, 5.5 bath. Just optimize the income as much as possible. And I really shifted gears to selling and only looking at real estate by the numbers. I mean, for me, it was always about the numbers, but it turned from selling a property, because it's a house, to really realizing that there's a major segment of the market that operates in selling real estate by the Excel sheet and understanding what that thing can produce. Of course, you have to look and see and test those assumptions. But that was how I was able to sell a lot of properties. And I found people really responded when I, spoke to them, and I said, well, this is a solution for cash flow. You're not buying real estate, you're buying a solution for cash flow and a solution to help your retirement goals or what have you. So got into that. And the market went crazy, and that model with those student rentals didn't work the way I felt as comfortable with. So I've done some other things. Along the way, I've also got into building new construction, because as I was building these burr projects for myself and for others, my mother-in-law, Carmen, she saw that I was moving quite quickly. I was getting some of these done in like 2.5 months, from start project to addition complete, closed in, ready for tenants to move in. She had a project that was moving a bit slow, asked me if I would help out. So before I knew it, I'm building new construction on 27 townhouses before I knew it. And I'd never done anything like that. I had no experience in construction or no reason to be there other than I could think critically, and I could, kind of manage people. And I think that's what allowed it to work. So fast forward, I'm still doing new construction. Right now I'm invested in Florida. I bought a whole bunch of building lots. Just put an offer in on a trailer park campground yesterday. So that's actually up here in Canada. But yeah, kind of starting to make some more moves again with the baby on the way. and to make life more interesting.
Yeah, super smart. And I think the approach that you had is you're looking at opportunities that maybe are being overlooked at the time, right? The student rental stuff in the beginning, maximizing the cash flow, seeing how the buyers and sellers are responding, what they're looking for. I mean, you're a very naturally curious person. I think I've just learned that just over knowing you over the years. You always ask the right questions, and even the methodology, right? When you launched the podcast, I remember having conversations with you at the summits about what that looks like, how you can really focus on the episode and put people in place to help you run that on the background. And it's always a moving target in all things entrepreneurship and business, but you're creating this pretty cool life for yourself in that space. The new construction piece I was going to bring up, because I remember watching your Instagram stories and you were building that one in Hunt Club West, which was my old neighborhood. And I loved watching the progression and the story of it and your attention to detail. So when you were in that new construction space, you almost acted like you'd been in it for 25 years, right? Is your methodology when you're approaching building projects like that really just, again, almost mathematical or surgical in your approach?
You know what? I think it's just about understanding that I don't know everything and finding good experts. And I think any successful man or woman will tell you that they found good experts. That's how they did it. And I think that I was very fortunate early on, and it came a lot from hard work. I can't discredit that, because I was hiring and firing people from Kijiji. Like, that was where I started. Like, my first Burr project, it was like all Kijiji people. And, like, you're going to have to fire 20 to get one good one.
That's the market right now, right? We talk about trades. Like, I know one guy doing a flip, and he's like, you should see the guy that's doing the roof. And I'm like, no, not to buy that flip.
Yes. Yeah. Roofing, off topic, but roofing is just like one of those things where it should be the easiest job ever. Justin, you or I today could do a good roofing job. We could be shown in the morning and do a good job in the afternoon. But the amount of people who do that job and do it badly is scary. So what I really leaned on is a couple of key people that came into my organization that were extremely knowledgeable and well experienced in the trades. And I lean on people I trust for best, expert advice. And I weigh that, and I always it's kind of like what a politician should do. They weigh the expert advice and then they make their own decisions. So that's always how I've kind of treated it in business is I'll lean on my carpenters. I'll lean on my trades that I've built a trust with and a relationship with. And that's how I learn. I'm always learning. I'm always piecing things together, what to consider, how the process of construction goes. And if you plan ahead for this, then if you plan ahead for X, then Y will go better. And that's always what it's been. Now, the one you're referencing in Hunt Club West, that was like a custom home. A friend of mine just begged me, he insisted I had to be the guy to help him. Even though, I would prefer to just do cookie cutter townhouses and just, like a printing press, just wrap them off. But, he asked me, so I agreed to help him in a consultancy role. And it was an interesting project. That's more like the custom home where you have to pay attention to every detail. That's harder because, as you've mentioned, Justin, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. And when I put my hands on, if my name's on it, it's got to be great. And it's tough because you get into a project like that, and when nothing but, awesome will do, that takes work. So you got to be careful with those kind of commitments. That's not typically something I get into, with the exception of what we're doing over at Blue Point, just because, there's 126 houses to be built. So I see the value in building systems to create that. And right now we're in the process, Justin, you and I are working together on that, and there's lots of work to be done in building these systems. But the hope is that once we get those systems going, we're going to be off to the races, and things are going to get a lot more smooth.
For sure. Actually, that's been super fun to work on you with, because I think we both see the light at the end of the tunnel. We also recognize we got to put our head down and work, right? We got to iron out the kinks and then make sure we launch the right way, because it's easy in this business for a real estate agent to put their signs up and sell and just start digging. But then what happens is supply chain issues hit. And if you're not prepared, you get destroyed. So, the delays that we've had up until this point have actually been a saving grace. I think it's given us the need to step back and then put the consumer first. I think that's what it's all about. And I'm going to bring back on Lindsay Gowan. She's already kicking me off because she wants to ask you a question and a great segue about natural curiosity. So Lindsay, why don't you go ahead and ask Andrew, and I'm going to kick myself off for a second here.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I was super excited to have you on today, just because I'm a longtime listener of your podcast, and whenever anyone wants podcast recommendations, it's Bigger Pockets and it's Andrew Hines. So I'm so excited to really dig into it with you today. But just wondering why you decided to start your podcast.
So a friend of mine was just mentioning to me, because we would always just talk real estate and, financial freedom. I always love talking about entrepreneurship, and to me, anything that creates freedom in life, right? Because I don't like the normal system. I've always spoken out against that. Like the traditional retirement, I think is insane. The traditional path that most Canadians are told to take is insane. So we'd always talk about, my friend and I would just talk about how the system's flawed, and how more people should be focusing on creating wealth, and how easy it is to create wealth with real estate relative to just about any other avenue. And so I saw, one, it gives me an ability to attract a following talking about something I would talk about anyway. And that's really how I've looked at it. I like talking about real estate, so why not just do it on a camera? And to this day, that mentality has maintained. I don't script anything. I barely edit my episodes, like in terms of cutting out content, unless I say something that I shouldn't have said, but that's rare. Usually I'm fairly unfiltered. So the idea is just, let's have a fun conversation about real estate. And then I think when people are driving in their car and just listening, it's like they were literally just eavesdropping on a conversation about real estate. And that's a great way of learning. And so I saw that as an opportunity to build a brand around my name, and who knows what comes from that. I didn't have a direct monetization strategy for that. Of course, I've spent quite a bit of money on this podcast and countless hours of my time, but the network and the people that it's connected me with has been one of the biggest benefits. The people who I have in my phone, who I can text anytime I want and talk to, the successful people that are in my circle, is it means a lot to me. And because you become the average of those that you spend the most time with. And I want to always be learning and growing and being around people who are more successful than me.
Completely agree. And question for you is, how did you attract these amazing people onto your podcast? Right when you're getting started, you had some really great names. Were they already in your network, or how are you attracting them to come onto your podcast?
Yeah, like a bunch of them were in my network right from the beginning. And then I think, as Justin pointed out, the production value was pretty good. I was doing highlight reels and stuff. Like I was just going full send on it. And because of that, people were just messaging me. They're like, "Oh, can I be on your podcast?" And it just grew and grew and grew. And, early on, I was just applying the Gary Vee model of just absolutely, spending countless hours putting it all together, making it awesome, and doing what most people would never do. And I think that's how I got it off the ground. I don't put nearly that much time into it anymore, which is unfortunate, because I would love to be able to still make all those highlight reels. And, again, no excuses there. I do need to grow. And, the team building part on my own kind of personal self-management side of things, my administrative side of things is the next part to grow. So that is a hire I've been talking about for a while, and there's been excuses and reasons why or why not to. But that will be that thing that will help me to kind of re-engage a little bit on some of the extra things that push this podcast out. But it's been just kind of growing naturally ever since, right? I've never felt the need like I needed to promote it. Like the word of mouth around this podcast has allowed the viewership and listenership to just continually grow, which I'm really grateful for everyone who listens. Thank you for all your reviews, for all your shares, and telling people about it, because it does the trick.
It's fascinating actually to see. And I think about the amount of times I've brought it up, like the amount of times I've pulled it up on my phone, sent it to somebody. New investors that Lindsay and I talk to and qualify sometimes, we'll send them your podcast. And it actually helps us significantly, because it gives them a lot of education about maybe what they're looking at accomplishing from a third-party source, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason we do these shows, a lot of people would look and say, well, they're a real estate brokerage, you clearly just want to pump sales out of it as well. Well, I was on stage yesterday with Seth Godin. Whoever's watching, if you know who Seth Godin is, he's like top 3 marketing all time, like one of the best authors on the planet. And I happened to be in this space through networking where I was able to ask him a direct question. My question to him was about community. And I said, community is a buzzword, right? A lot of people are using communities as a funnel and then selling you a course while they have no idea what they're talking about, right? That's a reality that I'm seeing online, left, right, and center, and it bothers me. So I asked him what the future of communities is. And he said, community is not about you. It's about the community. If you're actually serving the end use of the community, removing friction so that they can show up to events like these by posting it in 17 different groups this morning at 7 a.m. like I was doing, he's like, then the community takes on a life of its own. What you're explaining about your podcast is exactly that. There's no funnel in Andrew Hines' podcast. It's, here's me putting in 10,000 hours to meet some incredible experts, and I'm getting access to these people kind of just by accident. Let me share it with you so that you can succeed. And the only ask for somebody like you is really the reviews and the shares and all that stuff, but you don't even really ask for it. And I think that's why it happens. So that's going to lead to my next question. And my question to you, Andrew, is around how that podcast has changed your access to information, both, just the volume of information, but then the high level information that you're getting as well.
The changed information, I think that, the obvious one is just getting in conversations. Like I golf every Wednesday with Erwin, Zito, and like some of, the people in his circles. So I've allowed, that's allowed me to just meet so many of them. And, the more people that I could just see them, see their face and, immediately remember their name and say, hey, how you doing? And we have a chat, like that means a lot to me. And you never know, right? Like I'm sitting down with Mark Loeffler, recording a YouTube video, and I pick Mark's brain about something I'm working on, and or something, just high level advice. Hey, Mark, I've been doing something this way. Would you do it that way? And it means a lot to me to be able to hear really successful people's opinions, that they'll actually take the time and talk to me about what I'm doing and what I'm thinking, and give me their feedback. So that information is something I would not have had access to had I not done this. So I think it's a nice way to give back to a lot of people through this podcast. Like I'm able to give to the people who come on by giving them a reach with their voice, and I'm able to give to the people who are listening because they're getting stuff that they would have to pay for a lot too. And Justin, you're speaking on this, and I know you and I both know how much people pay for real estate education. And I saw that was one of the motivations for starting this, because I like the Gary Vee model. I don't want to just give you some of the information. I don't want to hold back and say, buy my course. I don't want to do that. And I kind of hated that about the industry. I wanted to just go, give it all away. And for the most part, I'd say 98% of people are really, really grateful for that, and actually want to find a way to give back to me because of that, which I've never actually required, or, other than just give it a review and share it with somebody that you think it could help. I just love that idea. Let's just give it away. And I don't know how I will monetize that. Maybe one day I'll write a book or something, or, I've sold some coaching, and I've done some of that. And even with that, I say, look, you don't need me. You don't need me. All the information's there. But if you want me to personalize it for you and get on the phone with you, we can do that. And, it's just one of those things. I did it on faith. And I know you asked about information and my connection to information. And this, I just wanted to touch on what you had said, but feel free to tweak the question if you want, or if you want to ask it again, or have me be more specific on some point.
No, I mean, it drove the growth, right? I think there's a difference between a transactional look at the world and, just setting goals, which can give you achievements, which is great. And there's a very big difference between that and growth, which leads to actual personal development, right? You talked about, the end games and the different things that could happen, and you could monetize and potentially do this, that, or the other. But it's funny how it's almost seems like a secondary to you, because I actually think with the amount of money being printed in the world, it's just a tool, right? Like I think money and the value of money is changing dramatically, where the value of relationship and time is the value, right? The community and the people are becoming the valuable piece in the transaction, not necessarily the money, because money is becoming easier and easier to find and to get. And we can go out and make money, but to build true relationships and community is a completely different thing. And, true wealth comes from the depth of your relationships, not necessarily the money and the deals that you're doing. I know, Lindsay, you had another question to go next.
I did. It's a different one, but I just would love to get your advice on, for someone starting a podcast, what advice would you give to them when they're starting?
I think the big thing is YouTube's your friend. Google's going to be your friend in this regard anyway. You're going to be able to search a lot of the topic, how you want to do it. It's ideal if you can have somebody help you get if you're not techie, like I've always been a little bit nerdy techie, like, built my own WordPress websites and whatever. But it was all hard work, hard learning. I mean, I don't think that's the best approach for everyone. For me, it worked. I think that my background being a musician and having fiddled with, cameras and such, that all helped me, so for me, I saw a beautiful little balance of a lot of skills that I had that would help me do this and do it well. That worked really well. So if you don't have those skills, rather than go invent the wheel, go find somebody who does. Go hire somebody that can help you set up with your camera, help you set up with your audio. But Also, do take from Gary Vee's book. If you want to do something like this, you're going to have to be ready to crush it. So read Crushing It. I've never read Crush It. I've read Crushing It. I thought it was great. You definitely are going to have to put in an astronomical amount of time. So be ready for that and know why you're doing it. Because if you're not clear on why you're doing it, then you're not going to stick with it. And that's probably the story for most people who try to start a podcast, is they don't stick with it.
Yeah, that's true about everything. Like, people like the bright, shiny objects. Real estate's super popular right now. There's more agents getting their licenses than I've ever seen. I think they think because it's easy. I'm like, they're not actually looking at the math behind the fact that there's a lot less deals actually going to the finish line, because you're losing 8 to every 10 that you're writing. But I want to stay super tactical in the podcast piece. I want to talk about the actual setup, right? So like back in the day, did you have all this, or was it just your iPhone and yourself? Like, let's walk through the actual gear and equipment and the evolution of that.
Well, okay. So the first episodes, I already had a video camera. I don't even remember why I got that. I had a video camera. So I just hooked that up and I hit record on that. And then I already had a condenser mic and a mic stand. So I just plugged it into my computer and my audio interface, and I just hit record and started talking. That's episode 1. Like, literally, it's just me, just hit record, started talking with no script, which I usually don't do that. 30 minutes of me talking with no script can go a lot of places that it shouldn't. So that's kind of how that started. And then from there, I'm like, okay, need a better audio interface. So I just started going on Amazon and finding stuff that was better than anything I had bought in the past and cheaper, obviously thanks to importing. So I was getting good stuff. Like, these not expensive. Justin, your mic is way better than mine, which I am a little envious of, but we're not going to go there yet. I don't need to do that yet. So just kind of adding, and then I wanted to do boom arms because the other stands were annoying and difficult to fiddle with. So I went out and bought a couple of boom arms. So the cameras that I've got, I switched over to a Nikon. It's just a DSLR. It's not a very expensive one. I have the 50 something. I got a room 5600, I think, D5600. I got a couple of cameras like that. They had 30-minute time limits, but they do really nice with the nice lens. They get a nice photo, a nice video. Like, I'm using that right now, so it's pretty crisp. And again, just constantly being curious, as you say, Justin. Constantly being curious. How do I make this better? I like making it better. So it's not work to me to find a way to improve it. It's work actually doing the episodes and editing them, but I've been able to farm some of that work out too. So I'm always the final look on it, though. Not to get too tangent from your little question. I'm always the guy that does the final review on an episode before I send it to air, because I think that's really important that, it said what I wanted it to say.
I think you maintain the trust of the audience that way too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've always been pretty big on that. People will message me and be like, well, like, do you actually manage your social media? And I'm like, of course I do. Like, the people that do it at the highest level that I respect, who I learn from, they're the ones actually sending the messages, because you can tell it's me when you're actually talking to me, because it's the same voice that you get now. And I think the quality control of the final episode drop is the most important piece. The other things you can kind of grow. This mic's not even that expensive. This is the lighter version of it. The reason I bought this one was it actually has a USB, which is easier from just a workflow perspective. So it's the Shure, I think it's the MB7.
Oh, it looks like the Joe Rogan podcast. I thought, well, see, the SM7B. Yeah.
That's the funny thing. So if I do this, that 7MB is there. But here's the problem. Here's the problem with people that get too far with equipment. Why am I using this versus the other one that's the Joe Rogan one? This is for the studio and the boardroom. The way that these mics work is the professional audio quality, and we've had some challenges with the Rodecaster and the noise vibration. So we're actually having to invest more in soundproofing. So it's caused more of an issue. This is my workhorse, and I think it's like $150. Like, it's the MB7 for anybody that wants to do a podcast. It's super easy to use. It's clear. It auto adjusts. And
sounds good.
Yeah, camera gear, all that stuff too. Like, I find people overcomplicate it, and then they get paralyzed trying to launch it. Lindsay's got the Apple headphones on. Those are like one of the best microphone headphone setups you can use, plugged right into your laptop with a webcam. So I think people overthink that stuff for sure.
Yeah. To your point, like my guests, I'll say, if you have a podcast mic, please use it. But if not, Apple headphones with an Apple built-in microphone is the second best. And it is good enough. Any of the Zoom episodes I do, that's what it is. Yeah, to this discussion, like, I really don't recommend someone go out and try and do what I've done if you don't have any sort of experience with with hardware, with this kind of stuff, because I had recorded my own songs. I knew how to record audio. So adding a video in was just one little extra thing. If you're learning at all, you're just going to spend all your time learning how to do that stuff. And is that your passion? You love that? If not, no, that's probably not the best idea. And then if you want to pay somebody else to do that level of quality, you're going to pay a lot of money. And how many people are going to stick with that unless they have a very clear monetization on that? If they know, okay, well, if I do X, I'm going to make, 2 more sales and I'm going to make $10,000 on each. Well, then maybe you can start justifying that. But for a lot of people, I think it's hard. So to this discussion, I think it's great. Yeah. Get a mic like Justin's, use your webcam to start until you've got traction, until you know that you can afford, if you maybe get a sponsor, somebody that'll help cover the cost of editing if you want to use nicer equipment and, improve your quality.
You talked about Gary Vee, and I'm like, I saw his podcast the other day and he was still using the Apple headphones. You could see it was just literally a laptop camera. And I think people just, it's an excuse that they use to just stop themselves from doing what they need to do to move themselves forward. I know Lindsay's got a pile of questions as well too, and I want to make sure she can get those in because she's fired up. So Lindsay, you can go ahead and ask your next question.
Awesome. No, I totally agree. And it points a lot to just getting started and not having to have everything figured out, which you have already said. So I think that that's a great thing to note. And when I was starting my podcast, Justin always just encouraged me to just start doing it. And it was great to listen to other people. It's a big thing is the interview and the content, and then everything else will just figure itself out. So you dove a little bit into why you got started into student rental. So I'm going to go a little bit off into more real estate investing because, again, that's my passion. I know that you kind of have adapted during COVID. Did you run into any issues when you were doing student rentals at like the start of COVID or throughout COVID?
I had no issues. I had one student ask for if she could have a month of free rent because of the situation. And I just said, unfortunately, the bank still expects to be paid. My insurance still gets paid. Utilities still get paid. Everything's still getting paid. So no, we gotta keep things as they go. I'm like, if you're in a cash pinch, like, tell me, we can set up a payment plan on that missed payment. No problem. Just let me know. And that was about as far as it ever got. Everybody always paid. I think it's because there was a lot of government handout for students. I think they were treated quite well in all this, for better or for worse. Worked out really well for us landlords. And so really, really great to deal with. I had no issues with any of my tenants with all of this. Everybody, aside from the standard ones, a couple of days late on something, that'll happen, but nothing too bad.
Awesome. And I think it goes a lot to your relationship with your tenants too. There was a lot of negative media about people that were slumlords and that weren't getting their rent because when the government said you don't have to pay your rent, then they didn't. But if you maintain those relationships and had that communication with your tenants, I think that was so crucial. Again, with all of our people, like our tenants, like no one stopped paying because we said that exact same thing. Like if you are in a situation, we want to help you, but if you can keep paying, like keep paying. But having that relationship, right, I think is so crucial. So
and demeanor too, right? Like I have a demeanor, like I'm not worried about it. And I think the students pick up on that. And earlier in my investing career, I probably would have been, but I know there are remedies and I don't put myself in a position where I'm worried about the cash. And as long as I'm not, then I don't stress. I don't lose sleep at night. And there's a lot to be said about the law of attraction here. If you're constantly stressed and anxious, you're going to attract things that are going to make you more stressed and anxious. So I feel keeping calm and cool has really helped me. And in those type of scenarios, and they just tend to work themselves out. And the more I've been in this business, the more I've been able to just keep cool about it all. Not saying that things don't get me, but a lot less than they used to.
So for principles of investment acquisitions, I want to touch on that. You put yourself in a position where you're never desperate for the cash. I see the opposite strategy with a lot of people who they're just looking to just scale at all costs. And it worries me. Like we're conservative by nature. So I always run worst case scenario. Like if you have to hold this for 20 years and the market dips 20%. So what are your methodologies or principles around that?
Well, what you just said, for one, I mean, I learned by losing, by getting hurt, and I'm grateful that I did because it made me smarter. It's hard to pull the wool over my eyes because I've been fed a line, from a contractor, from whoever, and I've believed it or wanted to believe. people's intentions. People had the best in their heart, but I mean, that's just naivety a lot of the time. I mean, of course you can believe the best in people and want the best, but you don't expose yourself to them in a way that if you're wrong. So I don't do that. So when I'm looking at real estate, yes, I do what Justin did. Yeah. What if there's a 20% correction, 30% correction? What if I had to hold on to this for 20 years to recoup my investment because it lost? Would I be okay with that? Under what circumstance would I be okay with that? And the answer generally always tends to be cash flow. So do I have abundant enough cash flow that even if the value did decrease, I'm still profitable? And even if rents decreased, I'm still profitable, right? I got a good buffer. Say I got $600 of cash flow on one property. If rents go down $300, now I got $300 of cash flow. That's still okay. You have to be thinking about that. I talk a lot about plan A, B, and C. Why did I buy this? That's my plan A. I bought this because plan A was to, BRRRR it and rent it out, get all my money out of it, and make $2,000 a month in cash flow. Okay, well, what happens if that doesn't happen? What happens if, one of the scenarios Justin just said happens? And I go through those scenarios. Okay, what's my plan B if that happens? Okay, well, maybe I could refinance it, leave some money in. I have extra money here that I can do that with. I'm ready for that. And I can wait because I like this asset. So I buy assets I like. I buy assets that I fundamentally believe in. And if I don't believe in it, that's time to move on. Maybe my preferences change, or maybe I don't feel as secure in an asset anymore, and I move on, and I'll start buying new assets and repositioning. So I'm very real about the possibility of losing because I've lost many times, and I think people get this illusion that they can just jump in and be completely successful and with no education, and I just want to buy an investment property because I heard this guy did an investment and he made $200,000 when he sold the place, so I want to do that. And hey, that's what we all want. And we get ahead of ourselves by not considering reality in the process. I've teetered this line of I don't want to be a pessimist ever. I generally consider myself quite optimistic. I find the thing that keeps me optimistic is being real and then being solutions oriented. Why am I buying real estate? What am I trying to accomplish? Keep that in mind. How do I do this and do it right? And if you're asking that kind of question, you stay on track and you get good investments, and you get investments that you're willing to keep. So anything I buy, would I be willing to keep this for 20 years? That's a pretty standard question, and circulating through my head if I'm ever looking at buying property.
Fascinating that you worded it that way. Again, we talk about the power of content media, right? And we talk about the proximity that your podcast has brought you to people. I have to give a special shout out to Breakfast with Champions, that group that I was in on Clubhouse the other day, talking to Seth Godin. Well, I didn't mention that last week, actually, Tiffany Haddish as well as Grant Cardone were also on stage. And I got to ask Grant a question about people's relationship with money. Right. And I said, what do you think it is that prevents people from wanting to get educated on money? Because I think what you just explained is you can be optimistic and say, like, there is opportunity in this space, but you can also be ignorant in the fact that you don't learn about what the pitfalls may be. Right. And I think looking at what the dangers is actually a good thing. If you can get comfortable in that uncomfortable space and building a relationship with money and what can go wrong, you're much better equipped to succeed because you'll recognize those signals as they come along. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I think that there's an emotional, our emotions kind of mislead us sometimes too. They skew the facts. We'll think the facts are a certain way, but our emotions have really just clouded that. I've been through times where I thought money was tight. And one of the solutions that I came up with to get over that fear, because it was controlling me, it was dominating my life, is I sat down and I looked at every resource I had. If I needed to, where could I pull money from? Did I have a line? Do I have credit cards? Like, just worst case, right? Because when am I really insolvent? Because I've had positions like that when things went bad for me early on. I still had property, but I was kind of broke, and I worked through it. And I found at the end of that exercise, I discovered that I had easily well more than $100,000 I had access to just in my own lines and credits and whatever. I'm like, okay, so I don't have anything to worry about. And I broke it down and I said, okay, well, how long until I can create, X amount of cash? What do I need to do? And I just started breaking the problem down, and I removed that emotional stranglehold that it had on me. And now I never let money control me that way. I keep more liquid than the average guy would. I keep more, like I always said, for my student rentals, I'd like to have them between $15,000 and $20,000 per account per house. So that to me, not necessary, but I never lost a wink of sleep because I never worried about the cash. If I had to do a $10,000 roof tomorrow, no problem. Nothing worried me. And that's a recipe for success. So my property's going up in value. Yes, I'm a little inefficient, but I'm buying something for my inefficiency. I'm buying my inner peace.
Yeah. And I've heard you say this before, so I'm going to pull it out of you right now. And you operate each property almost like it's its own little company, right? So that reserve fund that you have built up is to help run that company. People have many different organizations, but sometimes they'll just pool their money and deploy it against this one and then pull it back out and deploy it against this one. You have a very interesting approach of looking at each of your properties and making sure that it's set up successfully. So what do you do to set up a property properly in terms of reserve fund and contingencies and those types of things?
Like the basic setup is, first off, I have an bank account for that property, which pros and cons to that. I know some people who hate that because, I mean, you get a lot of bank accounts eventually. But it's necessary until your bookkeeping is really good, I think. So that's the model I started with because it worked. So start with the bank account for the property, have at least $10,000 in that bank account. Some people say have at least 3 mortgage payments, whatever works. I mean, whatever works for you. So that's the start of it. And then I automate my natural gas payment, my London Hydro. If it's London Hydro, I have them on auto withdrawal. My tenants get set up on a pre-authorized debit where the money goes into my account. So there's no chasing people. Don't chase people. It's a good way to not want to do this business. So everything's automatic. And I just preface it when I bring tenants in. I tell them like, this is how rent's collected. Is that going to be a problem? That's how I do it. If that doesn't work for you, no problem. Like maybe this isn't the property for you. And I've never had pushback on that. I think people see it as professional. And if you say right up front, this is how it's done, they see I am operating a professional business and they don't try things that are unprofessional. It's amazing you get out what you put into this. So I had a remarkably easy time managing my student rentals because I built really good products and I treated people really well. Anything that ever had an issue, I had already set up accounts with Hyde Park Plumbing in London. I'm not like trying to give them an endorsement, but they would allow me to just start an account. I said, any of these houses ever give you a call directly, you go out immediately and help them. And I just said, this is the contractor I work with. So to my tenants, I give them a list. I would literally just give them an email at the beginning of the season. And I'd say, welcome to the house. Here's what you need to know. If there's a problem, if this happens, I give them a bunch of if-thens. If this happens in the middle of the night, this is what you do. And I tried to cover everything. And over time, when something would come up that wasn't in the list, I would tweak the list and I would make sure that email goes back out. So I essentially replaced a property manager with systems. And that to me is the way to go, because if I use a property manager and let them control my property, the property manager's job is stressful. The property manager has hundreds of properties and their goal is to get it rented, not to get you the most rent possible, but to get it rented. They want to get tenants that they can work with. Yes, that's true. That's great. And I'm not poo-pooing property managers. I think they're a very good resource to have, but I just want to be real about it. I know that I can get more if I manage my own properties. So if I feel inclined, and I do, that I am able to set up the systems, especially with something with like the properties in London where I had systems, I had teams, I had people who could go over like a handyman. It made a lot of sense to me to self-manage. So that's how I set up my whole system. Is everything's automatic wherever it can be. I am not the conduit for information. I am not the hub of decision making. If I had somebody call me in the middle of the night, I intentionally would not answer that call. But then they would text me and they'd say, there's water overflowing in the basement. And I would respond, please call Hyde Park Plumbing. What do you want me to do about it? Am I going to come down there? Like, no, call them. They have a 24-hour emergency response and they would come out. And, just these things made, I started with property management on those student rentals because I was doing so much building and I just felt like I had no mindset space to get into managing. But when I slowed down on the building side, I took more time to refine my process and make sure it was what I wanted it to be in a scalable way. And I loved it. Student rentals, I think they're the easiest asset to manage traditionally. For me, I shifted gears. I decided for me that because of the way my student rentals were designed, I wanted to diversify assets. So I've actually shifted away from student rentals right now. And of course, I'm focusing on Florida. And if this trailer park thing goes through, that'll be pretty sweet. That'll have quite a bit of my attention too.
We definitely have to talk about Florida. I've had my eye on that place too, and I have some contacts down there that I'm collaborating with quite a bit. So it'd be very interesting to get your take on that as well, man. You should open a property management company, just partner with one that is just drowning and share your systems with them, because that's the funny thing, right? Is the methodology you just shared is a very clear and concise way for people to self-manage, right? Like you can't get up at midnight and go over and fix a plumbing problem because you don't work in that space, but you found a horizontal integration, aligned yourself with a company that happens to do that, put a system in place for that document. And sometimes people just need a reminder that it's in the document that you shared with them. What do I do? Well, I shared that with you. Just go to the document. All the links are there, right? And then as easy it is for you to turn around and be like, well, call this person, it's this number. Sometimes pushing them to just condition them to say, hey, everything's there, actually is the best thing for them, because next time you're saving them maybe half an hour of you getting back to them when they could have actually had somebody on the phone. So
they love it. They love it. They don't express it in those words, but I mean, I'm pretty sure my tenants liked me the best you're going to like a landlord. I had no problems. They all wanted to stay. I mean, unless the house was, a fundamental problem, but that's how you're doing a good job, is if your tenants want to stay, especially in student game, right? Are they staying the full 3 years? They should be, because turnover is expensive. You want them to stay. And I would never increase the rent on them if they wanted to re-sign, because to me, it's just not worth the turnover. If they're in, they're good. That's 90% of the battle. Let's just keep the cash flow the same. I'm already making money. And then when the rents come up again and they leave, then we'll increase the rent. But I was never in a hurry to do that with students, because I know they will leave. What's the most they're going to stay? 4 years, maybe if a really weird circumstance happens, 5. But usually it's 2 to 3 years. That's for most people, I think, the standard.
I think value-driven asset management is a term that just is popping in my head as you're speaking, right? And you can trademark that if you want to.
Sure.
Lindsay's taking all kinds of notes. Lindsay, are you getting any value from this?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, the thing I'll say, and I don't want to take all this credit, I did work with pad rentals, and I learned a lot of this from them. Not all. No, sorry. There's much of that is from me, but one of the things I learned is the Hyde Park connection, like how they just had the tenants call directly. And I'm like, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Okay, that's coming into my system. And so I think it's not that I think it's a bad thing to work with a good property manager. Find a really good one and work with them for a couple of years, maybe, depending on your model and what you can do. And then maybe down the road, if you learn what they're doing and you like it and you feel like you have the skill set to do that, there's huge cost savings. Like on one property, it probably saved $5,000 a year by not having a manager. So I mean, that's pretty awesome. That's $5,000 that I can keep. So that's just something to consider. That's if I'm having a turnover, right? It'd be $5,000 if I have to turn that unit over, because I'm paying a full last month's rent, plus I'm paying monthly. I just started seeing, well, all the property manager did was set up a bunch of systems. Why don't I just set up a bunch of systems, and then I can make that money? So that was kind of my thinking. I'm not saying everyone should do that, because I'm unique, you're unique. Everyone has their own, interests and skill set that work or don't work for that.
Well, you're a tinkerer, right? Like you're naturally curious, and you got to speak to your strengths. If that's what you want to do, fine. Sure. If not, you hire for that strength, right? If your strength is something else, then just focus on that, right?
Yeah. And like, say, for instance, down in Florida, I don't have a team there. So I'd be more inclined to hire a management company. I'm not going to go manage, my intent is to build one of these properties into an Airbnb, probably more than that. I'm not going to manage that myself. That'd be crazy. I have no systems down there yet for that. But maybe down the road, maybe when it makes sense, if the financial decision makes sense and it fits with my skill set, maybe I would.
One of my buddies runs one of the largest YouTube channels for Disney. So if you want to get into Disney, Ken Pozak's the man. I'll connect you with him as well. So Lindsay, we have a comment here. It said, great to be here, Lindsay. My first time here on such great content. Truly thankful. I'm new to real estate investing and in a learning phase. Facebook user. The reason your name's not coming up is you got to actually allow StreamYard to access your information. So feel free to drop your name in the comments. We'll give you a shout out. I'm going to kick Lindsay off screen and we're going to get into the rapid fire stuff. Lindsay, appreciate you so much for setting this up and being here. And did you have any final words for Andrew?
No, that's great. I'm so appreciative of you coming on and sharing so much. That Facebook user was Mary. She's a new investor, and I had the pleasure of jumping on a chat with her this week. And she's new to investing, so I invited her to come. And obviously, we get so much great content and people coming on. So, Andrew, thank you so much for your time, and really appreciate all your awesome answers.
Thanks for having me.
So it is Mary Voorhees. Thank you so much for being here. We definitely appreciate you. And if you're watching this stream and you're curious about how to get onto this channel, what you're going to do is you're going to click the links in the actual description of the video. There's one for the private Facebook group. We do these events on a monthly basis. We bring on samurais like Andrew Hines to dig into how they're doing what they're doing. They're constantly evolving. I'm sure Andrew's going to be back on for a future episode, maybe after we sell 126 houses at Blue Point and get some breathing room. And we'll talk about the evolution of things. I do want to ask you one more question before I get to my rapid fire questions. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah.
So you've interviewed all of these amazing investors. I'm driving around doing my thing. I feel like you're in the backseat with that investor with me in my truck. Is there any through line that you see or personality traits amongst these high level investors that you think allow them to have the success that they have?
That's a great question. Yeah, I've looked, it's kind of like the Napoleon Hill, he explains how he picked the interviews he did. And he was trying to find the common factor that created success. And I don't see it as any one thing just yet. I see a lot of commonalities, no negative talk in these people. I see, a lot of reliance on information that I've also read, like books, audiobooks, things that kind of put you in the right mindset. Because obviously everything stems from your mindset. Curing yourself of the mind viruses that we're all, indoctrinated into through everyday society. Most people have a negative attitude, and most, schools teach you to follow the conventional path. And this is not the conventional path. And the people I see successful in this industry are anything but conventional. So, it's really just getting the mindset in the right place is probably the number one. And there's a lot of common books like Think and Grow Rich, Influence, Robert Cialdini, I believe is the one. There's so many more that are just like escaping my mind, but I've probably read or listened to audiobook wise 100 or more personal success and growth books. And I could say that there's probably a very common trait there among a lot of these other guys that they do the same. And then, the other thing is just your attitude. Just can you be calm? Can you be cool? Can you be collected? Is that your mentality? Because if it is, I think that good things come from that. If you keep your mindset positive, objective still, but positive, and then you drive forward, I think you'll have a lot of success.
So producer Eric, can you please remind me to send Andrew a copy of the book Breathe by Rickson Gracie after we're done this? I'm reading it right now, and Rickson Gracie is the Michael Jordan of jiu-jitsu. Unequivocally, like the number one guy in the sport on the planet, no arguments. And his book talks a lot about that. And his success was the ability to stay calm in very difficult situations and not force something, and almost a stoic approach to life and training and mentality and everything that you're saying. I see in you because I've watched you do it over the years, and I love it because it's something that I aspire to be as well too. I'm far from perfect, but I'm willing to be a realistic optimist. You'll have a hard time getting my optimistic mentality away from me, despite whatever challenges we may.
No, I love it.
Yeah, you get right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So rapid fire. Here we go. You ready?
Sure. You know what? Give me 1 second because I just don't want this thing to time out on me.
No, you're good. All right, everybody. So while we are waiting, make sure you click in the chat. There's 2 links. There's one for his podcast, one for his YouTube channel. All you have to do is go to his podcast, subscribe, leave a review, please. He puts so much effort and time into these. And then subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. You can turn on the notifications so you don't miss anything. Andrew, are we good?
We're good.
Awesome sauce. Well, you already took one of my questions about how failure has shaped your life, so I can't ask you that one. So I'll start off with, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned?
That could change based on the day you ask me, but I would say trust has got to be earned.
I love that answer. What are you learning right now?
Learning a lot about our political system, law, legal, everything that goes behind what's going on right now.
Yeah, and I've been reading some interesting articles about that as well too. No man is an island, so you definitely want to educate yourself on that as well too. You know me quite well. So who do you know that I should know, or who do you think I would draw some inspiration from?
Oh, that's tough. Yeah, I don't know. You're a social butterfly, Justin. So out of the people I know, I feel like you must know of quite a few of them, but there's so many names I could give you. You must know Corey McKinnon. he's
I
out
do
your way,
actually.
right?
Yeah, he reached out to me a couple
Yeah.
months ago. We were chatting and we were supposed to connect, but we haven't. So I will use this as
Yeah.
encouragement. Shout out to Corey. I see what you're doing
Yeah.
with your keys, and he keeps growing too.
He's keeps his mindset in the right place. I know he's out your way. That's why he comes to mind, Sarnia, and he's influencing a lot of people. I'm seeing that, and I'm impressed by it.
His name's popped up with a couple people that he's coaching and in my world, and they have nothing but good things to say. And you are what people say you are when you're not in the room. So that's actually a good sign. What have you read that I should read?
Well, that is a good question. Here, let me look. Sorry, I know we got.
No, you're good. Go ahead. No, I love it that you said that too. You talked about the object on mine too, right? And I constantly look at my library as well.
Yeah. There's things like there's a lot of redundancy in this kind of area of books, right? Like, you could read one thing by Gary Keller. Who Not How was a huge one more recently for me. Have you read that one already?
No.
Who Not
I
How?
haven't
Yeah.
Actually. It's sitting on my stairs at my house. I bought it for my wife, but I'm going to start reading it too.
Yeah, that one's a lot of people cite that as one of the more recent books that have really changed the way they think, and I like it. It's the concept that who is in your team is way more important than how you are accomplishing something.
Amazing. I definitely appreciate that. And if people are watching this right now, you can actually text this text number and I'll send you a replay of this so that you can hear this entire episode from start to finish and make sure that you see everything. Last question, the most important question. How can I bring value to you? What are you working on? Where can I send people? Let me know.
You know what? Just send people on over to the podcast for now. As I mentioned, this is about building building a community, as you said, and I think it's building trust, right? Like I want people to know that this is where they can come and they can get, as unbiased as it can be kind of information. I'm not really selling anything. I'm just having conversations about real estate, and I do push on people. I do ask the real questions is I want to know, right? If you want to know something, hey, it's stuff I want to know. So send them on over. And if anyone listening, watching this, subscribe to the podcast. And if you do want to connect with me, you can try shooting me a message through Instagram. I do my best to get back to people. Some do get missed, but I think I'm pretty good with that.
Well, I promise you, if you leave a 5-star review on the podcast, he'll know your name because he'll see every one of those that pop up. And I give everybody a challenge as well. Let me know who you think a great guest would be in the investing space on Andrew's podcast, something that he's probably always ideating on, and drop it in the comments on YouTube. Feel free to reach out to him directly. Andrew, I definitely appreciate you making the time this morning. Go enjoy this beautiful Saturday, and I will see you next week.
Justin, thanks a lot. You're freezing up there a little bit, but thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to be seeing you on Wednesday, I think.
It's the truth. Yeah, thanks, brother. And I will end it now because I'm freezing. See you, buddy. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.